Before sunrise, the air in the Apennine foothills is cold and still. At the mouth of a mine, men wait in silence. They are enslaved workers, owned by the state or leased to private contractors. Each carries a small oil lamp, a pick, and a basket. Overseers stand nearby, counting tools and bodies, making sure no one is missing. When the signal is given, the men descend into the darkness, climbing down rough ladders into narrow shafts cut deep into the rock. These mines operate during the final centuries of the Roman Republic and the early Roman Empire, when Rome already dominates the Mediterranean. Italy is no longer a land fighting for survival. It is the political and financial center of an empire that stretches from Spain to Syria. Mines in Italy still produce silver and lead, especially in central and northern regions, but they are no longer the main source of precious metal. Far larger quantities now arrive from conquered provinces, particularly from Hispania, where vast mining complexes, such as those at Rio Tinto and Las Medulas, are worked on an industrial scale. The wealth of Rome does not begin in markets or banks. It begins with force. Roman armies defeat rival states and communities, then systematically extract value from them. Victorious generals seize gold and silver stored in temples and treasuries. Entire populations are enslaved and sold. Land is confiscated and declared public property, then leased or granted to Roman elites. Defeated states are required to pay war indemnities, often over many years, transferring steady streams of silver to Rome. Ancient sources such as Polybius and Livy describe these practices in detail. Raw metal taken from mines or seized in war is transported under guard to mints. These mints operate under state authority, striking coins to standardized weights. Silver denarii and gold aurae carry the marks of Roman power, including the names and images of magistrates or emperors. This standardization allows coin to circulate across vast distances. A silver coin minted in Italy can pay a soldier in Gaul or purchase grain in Africa because its value is trusted and enforced by Roman authority. From Rome, roads spread outward like spokes from a wheel. These roads are not built primarily for travelers. They are built for control, taxation, and supply. Wagons carry bullion, coin, and taxes collected in kind toward the capital. Grain, olive oil, wine, wool, and metal move steadily along these routes. Milestones and way stations regulate distance and travel time, allowing the state to plan movement with precision. Along the banks of the Tiber, the river is crowded with barges. Warehouses rise behind the docks, built of brick and concrete. Inside them are stacked amphorae filled with oil and wine, sacks of grain, and piles of metal ingots stamped, with marks identifying their origin. These facilities are well documented archaeologically, especially at Rome and its port city of Ostia. The river allows heavy goods to be moved cheaply into the city, feeding both the population and the treasury. For ordinary people, this flow of wealth changes daily life. In the city, craftsmen, builders, and laborers are increasingly paid in coin rather than barter. Regular cash wages allow some to survive without land, but they also make people dependent on a functioning monetary system. In the countryside, many small farmers struggle. Cheap grain from the provinces undercuts Italian producers. Wealthy landowners buy up abandoned plots and create large estates worked by enslaved labor. This process is described by Roman writers such as Pliny the Elder and is supported by land use evidence. Former soldiers are rewarded for their service with land grants or cash payments. Their futures are directly tied to Rome's success in war. Expansion means reward. Stagnation means uncertainty. Loyalty to commanders and later to emperors is reinforced by money taken from conquered lands. Over time, Italy produces less of its own food. It relies increasingly on grain shipped from overseas. Wealth concentrates in the hands of a relatively small elite who control land, mines, and contracts. This system brings immense prosperity to Rome, but it also creates dependence. The city thrives only as long as silver continues to arrive, ships continue to sail, and conquest or taxation continues to feed the system. As evening settles over Rome, the forum grows quiet. Money changers gather their coins and close their tables. Storekeepers bar their doors. Tomorrow's trade, wages, and distributions depend on cargoes still at sea and on resources drawn from lands far beyond Italy. The flow of wealth never truly rests, but even now it is clear that it must be constantly maintained or the system will falter. The sun stands high over the Nile Valley. The heat is heavy and unmoving. Farmers work the fields barefoot in the mud, lifting water from the river with wooden shadufs. Each pull raises a bucket. Each release sends water into narrow channels that spread across the fields. The grain is already tall, its color shifting from green to pale gold. Nearby, tax officials stand in the shade, holding wax tablets. They watch carefully. What grows here does not belong only to the people who planted it. This scene unfolds in Roman Egypt during the 1st and 2nd centuries of the Common Era. Egypt is one of the most tightly controlled provinces in the empire. Its value lies not in silver or gold, but in grain. The annual flooding of the Nile creates predictable harvests, and predictability is what the Roman state values most. From the moment Egypt becomes a Roman province in 30 before Common Era, its agricultural output is directed toward feeding Rome. Across the empire, wealth is generated through regular taxation rather than sudden conquest. Most taxes are not paid in coin alone. They are paid in goods. Grain, olive oil, wine, livestock, wool, and textiles form the backbone of imperial revenue. Censuses record land, people, animals, and production capacity. These records allow the state to assess how much each community owes. Local elites play a crucial role. They collect taxes from their neighbors and deliver them to Roman officials. In return, they receive status, protection, and often a share of the profits. In North Africa, especially in what is now Tunisia and eastern Algeria, vast estates are planted with olive trees. Archaeological surveys show rows stretching for kilometers. Oil presses operate seasonally, crushing olives under heavy stone wheels. The oil is poured into amphorae, clay jars shaped for transport. Each amphora is sealed and stamped with marks that identify the estate, the producer, and sometimes the official inspector. These stamps are not stamps, decoration. They are part of an administrative system that tracks ownership and taxation. In Egypt, grain moves by river. After harvest, it is measured, taxed, and loaded onto barges. These barges drift north with the current, carrying tens of thousands of tons each year. At the Mediterranean coast, the grain is transferred to seagoing ships. Ancient writers such as Strabo describe the scale of this traffic, and shipwreck evidence confirms it. These ships sail westward to Italy, guided by seasonal winds. They do not sail to Rome itself. They sail to its port. Ostia and later Portus serve as the entry point for Rome's food supply. There, grain is unloaded into state granaries. From these granaries, it is distributed to merchants, bakers, and directly to citizens entitled to subsidized grain. Without this system, the city cannot function. Moving goods across such distances requires infrastructure. Roman roads are carefully surveyed and maintained. Milestones mark distances. Harbors are dredged and reinforced. Lighthouses guide ships at night. Standardized containers reduce waste and theft. These investments do not exist for comfort. They exist to ensure that taxes arrive intact and on time. For ordinary people in the provinces, this system brings both opportunity and pressure. Some regions benefit from roads, markets, and steady demand. Towns grow around supply hubs. Craftsmen find work producing tools, containers, and transport animals. Others struggle. Small farmers must meet quotas regardless of weather or illness. A failed harvest does not erase tax obligations. Debt accumulates. Land is lost. People fall into dependency or are compelled into labor obligations. Many livelihoods depend on movement. Dock workers unload ships. Mule drivers haul amphorae inland. Sailors risk storms to meet deadlines. Scribes record every transfer, every seal, every count. If ships are delayed, wages stop. If roads fail, cities feel hunger. The system is efficient but fragile. Floods along the Nile can be too high or too low. Storms can scatter fleets. Corruption can divert supplies. When this happens, the effects ripple outward. A poor harvest in Egypt can raise prices in Rome. A delayed fleet can cause unrest. The empire depends on coordination across thousands of kilometers. As evening approaches, the grain ships near Ostia lower their sails and drop anchor. They wait for favorable winds and safe harbor conditions. The cargo below deck is heavy with promise and risk. Inside Rome, bakers, officials, and citizens depend on its arrival. The wealth of the empire is no longer abstract. It is measured in shiploads, in harvests, and in the labor of people who may never see the city they sustain. As dusk settles along the Rhine frontier, the fortress courtyard fills with quiet movement. Soldiers form a line near the headquarters building. A clerk sits at a wooden table with a set of scales and a chest of coins. One by one, men step forward and receive their pay. Silver coins are counted carefully into open hands. This payment is not symbolic. It is expected, recorded, and essential. A Roman soldier's loyalty depends on it. By the 1st and 2nd centuries of the Common Era, the wealth of the Roman Empire is not something that rests in vaults. It is in constant motion. Taxes collected from provinces flow inward to the state, then outward again almost immediately. Money pays soldiers, funds construction, supports officials, and feeds cities. Without this continuous circulation, Roman power cannot function. The largest single expense of the empire is the army. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers must be paid regularly. Their wages come primarily from provincial taxation. Soldiers also receive food, clothing, and equipment supplied through state contracts. Fortresses like this one along the Rhine are built and maintained with public funds. The army enforces borders, suppresses rebellion, and ensures that taxes continue to be collected. In this way, it both consumes wealth and protects the system that generates it. Cities are another major destination for imperial spending. Rome itself is the most demanding. Its population depends on subsidized grain distributed through state programs. This system is well documented in ancient sources and supported by archaeological evidence from granaries and ports. Without regular grain distributions, unrest is likely. Emperors understand this risk. Feeding the city is a political necessity. Urban infrastructure also requires constant investment. Aqueducts bring fresh water from distant hills. Baths must be heated and cleaned. Roads inside and outside cities are repaired to keep goods moving. Some of this funding comes directly from the imperial treasury. Some comes from local taxes and elite donations. In both cases, wealth is spent to maintain order and loyalty. As expenses rise, pressure builds on the monetary system. Coinage remains central to payment and taxation, but over time, its metal content changes. Beginning gradually in the 2nd century of the Common Era, silver coins contain slightly less silver than before. This process is known from chemical analysis of surviving coins. It allows the state to mint more coins from the same amount of metal, effectively increasing supply. This is not a sudden collapse, but a slow response to growing costs. The practice reflects financial strain rather than ignorance. For ordinary people, these systems shape daily survival. In cities, residents rely on public water, grain distributions, and markets supplied by long-distance trade. A disruption in funding or supply is felt quickly. In the army, soldiers depend on regular pay to send money home or to save for retirement. Delayed wages can lead to unrest, something Roman emperors are careful to avoid. Taxpayers across the empire experience the burden from the other side. As military and administrative costs grow, assessments increase. Collection becomes stricter. Officials are under pressure to deliver set amounts. Failure can mean punishment or loss of position. For farmers and towns, this can translate into heavier demands, forced labor on roads or fortifications, and reduced margins for survival. The system works best when expansion continues. New provinces bring new taxpayers, new land, and new resources. When expansion slows, as it does by the late 2nd century of the Common Era, the balance shifts. Expenses remain high, but new sources of wealth no longer appear. The empire must support itself from what it already controls. This creates long-term strain. Inflation reduces purchasing power. Taxes rise in both cash and goods. Labor obligations increase, tying people more tightly to their land or profession. These pressures are unevenly felt, but they accumulate over generations. Night falls along the frontier. Torches are lit on the walls. Soldiers take up watch positions, scanning the dark beyond the river. The lands ahead are no longer targets for conquest. They are borders to be defended. Behind the walls, pay chests are locked away, already emptied for the month. The wealth of the Roman Empire still flows, but now it circulates within fixed limits, sustained by constant work, constant movement, and the labor of countless people who will never walk the streets of Rome.